Sam Moss, the executive director of Mission Housing, my landlord, and also one of the most badass affordable housing
Thank you.
nonprofit developers in the city, building a fuck ton of housing. It's a real honor to do this with you. Thank you for making the time. I know there's a lot going on right now with you and what you're doing and all your residents, so I appreciate it. For those who are tuning in now, thank you for taking part in Manny's Super Civic Cyber Conversations. We're bringing civic programming to you in this time of need. A couple quick notes. If you have a question for Sam about affordable housing and how all this is affecting affordable housing, just type it in the Q&A box. You don't have to wait. You can just go ahead and type it in the Q&A box now. And this is going to be about 15 to 20 minutes of Sam and I talking, and then we'll have opportunity for you to ask questions. And if Ben is on the call, I'm sure he's going to troll me a little bit.
If you don't have all three of us on sometime, man,
oh my God, I'm nervous.
You're really missing out on a sure win.
You guys are quite the threesome over there.
Yeah, that's just what I was going for.
Yeah, you make for great entertainment. For folks who are here, please press the raise your hand button. I'd love to see who's here and just get a hello from people, just to make this thing less awkward and more familial. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for raising your hands. Okay, welcome, Sam. First question for you is, how are you doing right now? How are you feeling? How's your emotional health? How's your physical health? How are you?
I'm doing okay. Laura and I are sheltering in place. It's tough, you know. I'm sure as everybody gets that, like trying not to go crazy. Yeah. I've never walked up and down so many hills in North Beach. I've lived here for like 12 years, and I feel like I'm exploring places for the first time at least.
What's the scene like in North Beach? What's it feel like when you walk down the streets?
Man, I'll tell you what, Fisherman's Wharf especially feels like a crazy deserted land. It's surreal, but you know, going outside helps for sure. Yes. And I'm really lucky. I mean, like the Mission Housing staff is doing such an amazing job that, you know, I'm just lucky to get to work with them.
Yeah. So for people who don't know about Mission Housing, and kind of what you do and the scope of Mission Housing, do you mind just giving a sense of, like, you know, how many buildings do you guys own? How many folks live in your affordable housing units, and kind of like what kind of construction you're going through right now for people who don't already know, you know, how awesome you guys are and all that you do.
Great. Yeah, sure. So we're a 48-year-old nonprofit affordable housing developer. We're the first one that was created in San Francisco, and we're a community-based nonprofit that's based in the Mission District, but we build all over San Francisco. So we have about 36 properties right now, around 1,700 units, and about a little more. I know it's scary, and a little more than like 3,000 tenants or so. And then we're really proud to.
Tenants?
We have about 3,000 tenants, yeah, and we actually have another 1,000 100% affordable family units, with some singles for seniors in our pipeline as well. So more much needed affordable housing on the horizon.
So roughly 3,000 tenants and 3,000 individuals or units?
No, about 3,000 tenants, about 1,700 units. Yeah.
And another 1,000 coming through.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So where, and most of that housing is concentrated in the Mission. Is that correct?
A lot of it is. We're also building 1950 Mission right now and 490 South Van Ness. That's about 200, little more than 200 units that are about to come online, hopefully later this year, God willing. But you know, we're also a partner in the Balboa Reservoir development, which, you know, and then we're also building 136 units above the Balboa BART station. So spreading our wings a little bit.
Amazing. So my first question to you is, because it's so top of mind, because it just got announced, is, you know, a freeze on construction. Does that affect you guys? And if it doesn't affect you, you know, how is construction going with the affordable housing units that you were in the process of building before all this came down?
Yeah, I mean, so we're fortunate in the sense, I mean, I don't know how if you could say that we're fortunate. We're in such a housing crisis right now that affordable housing, 100% affordable housing especially, has been deemed an essential service. Yeah. So, you know, our construction projects can and will move forward, but, you know, we're just as concerned, we have to be more concerned with safety precautions and things like that. You know,
Yeah.
people taught. So, I mean, in that regard, though they are moving forward, it's certainly with an abundance of caution
Yeah.
on all sides. I think this recent more of a construction halt, I think like it'll take a little while for the dust to settle to figure out what it might mean. But I think that, God willing, we'll be able to at least keep our 100% affordable projects moving forward.
This is a hard projection to make and also a controversial question, but I've never been afraid of asking controversial questions, as you know. Um, do you feel like one of the when you start to think about the long-term ramifications of what's happening right now to the city, and we don't necessarily know what the long-term ramifications are because we're still in it, how do you think that's going to affect, a pipeline of market rate housing, the pipeline of affordable housing? Do you think, luxury or market rate, whatever you want to call it, not luxury or market rate or below market rate? How do you think are there projects that you think are going to stop because wealthy people are going to leave and startup companies are going to, like, where are you thinking of the dominoes and how they're falling and how they might affect the industry that you're a part of?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's tough to really know. I mean, I think that what's really going to be hard is that, the amount of layoffs that are happening in the construction industry right now are extremely detrimental, to our working and to our middle class. And we already know that those people's homes were being pushed out to the suburbs further and further to begin with. And so, one thing about affordable housing is that in some sense, to a certain extent, we can be a little bit countercyclical. We already thank God, passed the bond, and there are funds for low income housing, but as we know, our social safety nets get cut, a lot, and what I'm really worried about is we were just getting to this point that the state of California is finally starting to take the affordable housing crisis serious, and then by that I mean like really expanding funding, and the federal government. There's this person that's running HUD right now, and we'll leave that D, but even they have been more willing, HUD has been more willing to talk about more funding, and I'm worried that, and if we need to cut, we need to cut, but I'm worried that this crisis will be used by people down the road for cutting something that they probably wanted to cut anyway, but because of the organizing and the work that the advocates have done over the last, 5-10 years, they couldn't, right? Like, affordable housing is on is like for the first time ever, it's being talked about in presidential debates. And so I'm worried. What I'm most worried about is it really felt like momentum was like slowly starting to happen. And I'm sure a lot of industries are like that.
Do you think it's possible that the economic fallout that occurs as a result of the shutdown might instigate or catalyze the desire for more affordable housing? Is that possible, or is that just wishful thinking?
No. I mean, it certainly will, but it's important to remember that, I mean, I don't know that we could have a louder cry for affordable housing right now. But the shutdown, you can scream for affordable housing all you want, truly, but we have set up our society to have it be, it's married to market rate housing. No matter who you vote for, I don't care if you read 48 Hills or the Chronicle, it's attached to market rate housing. And so, if we kill all economic engines, and we know how much housing is used as an economic engine in our country, especially, but throughout the world, we really will be killing even any chance that we have it to deliver on that affordable housing. So, what I would really love to see is that we disentangle the two, for one, if that's a thing. But yeah, I mean, I certainly think that God, this crisis is horrible, and I wouldn't want anyone to go through it. But I do think that you'd have to be hard pressed right now, especially, not to see, how important it is to have like a home for everyone. It's extremely blatant right now. And, we've been underbuilding housing for so long in the city, so long in the Bay Area. And, on the one hand, I'm happy that our construction projects are still going forward. But on the other hand, like, they're going forward because we didn't build enough housing a decade ago and 20 years ago. So we're having to we're putting workers into a situation that perhaps we wouldn't have had to.
Okay, two more number and budgetary questions for you.
Go for it. I love it.
Okay, so one, the $3 trillion federal stimulus bill, was
Yeah.
any money in there allocated to building housing?
Yeah, so there was. I know that there was a good amount. I don't have it all handy right now, but I do know that there was a good amount of money for public housing, which will filter down through. Sorry, I use the word filter. Which will filter down. It'll trickle down through HUD.
It's better than trickle down. We don't want
to all of the housing authorities.
That's good.
And then I also saw that they drastically increased the community development block grant money, the CDBG. We love our acronyms in this industry. CDBG, community development block grant money, has for a really long time been one way that nonprofit developers pay for their salaries, for pay part of their operating costs. And so that's a really, really important thing too.
Okay, and what about the $1.7 billion potential shortfall that we found out today or yesterday? We got the press release that, the mayor's saying, the city may lose as much as the budget will shrink by about $1.7 billion. How do you think that'll affect your work as an affordable housing developer?
I mean, it's always hard anytime anything's trimmed and, anything. I mean, it's the thing about the affordable housing industry that is so difficult is that even in the best of times, the way that we have to cobble together money, from so many different places means that, like, if any one little thing goes wrong, deals can fall through. And so anytime anyone's talking about anything except for like sunshine and roses, it has an outweighed drastic effect on especially funding. So yeah, it's scary.
Operator, you're in there? You're there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm working on stuff. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it was hard to concentrate. I was like, gosh.
I know. Oh my God, Sam. Okay, I want to talk to you about the difference between the tenants and the residents. Okay.
Okay.
So you have a lot of tenants,
right.
And you have a lot of residents,
mm-hmm.
and the population that is in your housing are folks that are living in affordable housing, and so you can make the guess that these are not folks who are living at the top of the economic, food chain or whatever. These are folks that maybe a lot. Do you know how many of your folks have lost their jobs? Do you know how many folks maybe can't pay rent? And then also, what are you hearing from your commercial tenants? You're the first landlord that I'm speaking to, and so we talked to a lot of folks who are suffering on the ground floor or in their homes. But what are you seeing as a landlord?
Well, I mean, I think that we have a lot of working families, right? We have a lot, and there is a lot of people in the service industry, a lot of non-exempt jobs, and even some exempt jobs. So, we are certainly hearing from a lot of our tenants that, either they have lost their means of income or they're worried that they will. Mm-hmm. I think the worry is just as valid right now. Certainly if you lose your income, that's horrible. But we have been approached by a lot of tenants, and myself and Marcia Contreras, our deputy executive director, and our staff, we're working really hard to put into place a portfolio-wide policy. The first thing that I want to say though is, like, we're not in the eviction business. It's not something that Mission Housing does. Like, if you're in one of our buildings, whether you be a residential or commercial tenant, like, you should rest assured that you will in no way, shape, or form ever be negatively penalized because of a crisis. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you. I've heard a couple horror stories of landlords sending rent increases and things like that right now, and it takes a special kind of entity or person to do something like that. But Mission Housing, I'm really proud because we're a nonprofit, right? We're a community development corporation, so that's who we work for, the community. And we already are an entity, and that in our core mission believes that when you are one of our tenants, you're in our family. And so long before our crisis, I would say some of the most impressive and important work that our resident and community services department does is ensuring that our tenants don't get to the point where they might be evicted, right? You help them out way early because
Right.
like we're all kind of in this together. So, I think the affordable housing industry especially is once again, we are poised to help solve all the ills of the world, which is what we're called upon to do at every single property.
Mhm.
So, maybe if there was some affordable housing in the Sunset, we could be helping them out too.
Yeah, I mean,
Someday.
it is,
Someday.
I feel lucky to be a tenant of Mission Housing. I really do.
Thank you. We're lucky to have you.
You don't hear there aren't a lot of landlords that look at tenancy with the first filter
Mhm.
is how to solve society's problems, how to be just. And so you can't ask for a better landlord, especially in the work that we're doing at Manny's, which is all about civic engagement. And most people are not that lucky. Most landlords are thinking first and foremost about
Mhm.
profit
Mhm.
or whatever that is. They're not first thinking about social justice. So I
Mhm.
do feel lucky. Taking your Mission Housing hat off and
Okay.
just being a landlord. How do you
Okay.
think this is going to affect landlords around the country? I mean, there's an article today in the New York Times about how it's April 1 and 40% of New Yorkers are probably not going to pay rent, and
Right.
that might have a ripple effect. So what's the effect going to be of that?
Yeah, I think that the landlord is really the middle person for like the bank and the investment hedge fund, the investment money. And then I'm a renter, right? Laura and I, we went to North Beach. And so I think that the ripple effect will really depend on, and I hate to say this because I don't think that BlackRock does have anyone's best interests at heart.
Mhm.
BlackRock became the largest landlord after the recession, not because it wanted to get in the housing crisis, but because it foreclosed on so many loans, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that, I've been trying to talk, you bring up a good point. I've been trying to talk with my staff here and there about like, if hopefully everyone realizes that we all have hit the pause button kind of for our lives in
Right.
terms of when things were due or when we had a deliverable or when do we pay taxes, these things. It's not just us, like the banks have to push stuff back and the government's pushing stuff back.
Right.
And I think landlords are freaking out for sure.
Are the banks doing that? Are the banks saying are you hearing, maybe not for you, but other landlords like, hey, we understand what's going on.
No.
You don't have to pay us back this month?
No. It like everything else, it will take organizing from tenants to tell other tenants about it.
Organized to the banks?
No, I'm saying if there is mortgage forgiveness, right? Like we have it there. Some people are demanding mortgage forgiveness, right, for single family homes. Like it will trickle to other places, but I think that the landlords especially are in a unique position where a lot of them, like, they need all the rent just to pay their loan,
Mhm.
right? They over leverage themselves. They took money and it requires the pay, they're in some ways they're really like check to check, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mission
Yeah.
housing is not like that. And so that's what I mean. I think and it's scary because the last time that we got into a situation like that,
Yeah.
places like BlackRock just like took everything. And so I hope HUD, God, I can't believe I'm saying I hope HUD helps out, but like, it's going to take, if it's as bad as everyone really does believe that it is,
Yeah.
and we use the recession as like a litmus test for how bad it could and has gotten recently, then yeah, I mean, I think the ripple effect of the no rent paying will really like be something that shines a light on what we've done to real estate in this country, right? Which is like to use it as this ridiculous wealth engine that
Yeah.
topples over at the slightest wind.
Right. And we're gonna open up to Q&A in just a minute or two. So if you have a question for Sam, now is the time to write it into the Q&A box. So if you have a question for Sam, you can write into the Q&A box. I want to ask you about San Francisco because I know you think you eat, breathe, and sleep San Francisco. This is, you're so involved in this city. And I want to ask you, what you perceive to be, um, a lot of people are saying that, with every crisis comes opportunity.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't believe that this is a case of silver lining, right? It's an unabashed tragedy,
Yeah.
economic and also a health tragedy.
Hmm.
And at the same time, it is a crisis, and there are opportunities in crisis. And so, how are you maybe thinking about this, about some of the opportunities that might be presenting themselves via this crisis, and how do you think actually the city can grow from this?
Well, I mean, I think that I think that the affordable housing industry, mission housing especially, like we have certainly, we have done our best to have rainy day money, and
Yeah,
that might translate into being able to make some purchases down the road. But like first and
yeah,
foremost, I am personally most concerned with ensuring that all of mission housing staff, continues getting a paycheck and everything. And we are very solvent. Thank God we have such a good staff that,
yeah,
and such a good board that we're okay. But, I think that when you talk about like a crisis and an opportunity, I think especially for my industry or the way I see the world, it usually means that some entity has to have a bunch of money somewhere.
yeah,
Um, and I think it's where you're getting at, and that I don't know if we've really found that silver lining yet, because I think we all saw the budget. Well, not everyone. I guess not everyone watches SF.gov TV every day, but you know, our leaders are talking about cutting tens of millions of dollars from our budget already. And yes, we have a bazillion-dollar budget, but so that money, so I think that what more than anything is the way that we interact politically and democratically is going to never go back to the same way. You know, I talk all the time about how one of my biggest frustrations is that most people, we make participating in our democracy like as undemocratic as we possibly can, right? Show up at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday and you can participate in democracy. And like, I think that now that we're showing everyone that you can just have Zoom, you can videotape your public comment. I think that what the opportunity that we can grab right now is making the way that we engage civically so much more equitable, so much more inclusive. You
right,
know, the typical person gets a notice of housing in the mail and they look at it and they're like, cool. And they crumple it up and they go make dinner and watch Netflix, right?
right,
Like that doesn't count as supporting housing at
right,
all.
right,
And so I think that a lot of those people might at least, get on Zoom
right.
and get, not everyone certainly, but what I'm hoping is that what we can take advantage the most is like getting more people to continue, to be civically engaged for the rest of the times, not
Right.
just because we're all fearing for our lives.
Right. All right. So thank you for that, Sam. And let's get to some of these questions. We have a fair amount. We've got a
Okay.
little under 10 minutes to get to them. So Fred wants to know, will the economic collapse provide cheap housing? And maybe
I
think of
don't
that, like,
know. I mean, yeah, cheap housing. I think that you get what you pay for. I hope that if we do have somewhere, I do hope that we'll get a ton more market rate and affordable housing. I hope that it does lead to more construction being available, but cheap housing is, it's cheap. And we literally are going through a period in our city where we didn't build structurally sound buildings and we're paying for it now. So I hope it leads to a lot of high quality
it's like
market rate.
bedding. It's like bedding, kind of. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like if you have bad bedding, it won't breathe
yeah,
anymore.
right. Yeah, exactly.
You don't want it to be too cheap. Brian,
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about how the super low interest rates that we have, about the super low interest rates that we have right now? Does that hurt or help affordable housing production?
Well, I mean, it helps in the sense that if an affordable housing developer is confident that it has a revenue stream and can go get normal modes of debt, then that just helps us compete. Because what we do is we just compete against the market, right? Like there's no like super special secret sauce of going and buying a land and turning into affordable housing. And
Right.
it's always been kind of like a zero sum game, right? So the interest rates can go as low or negative, whatever as we want. if you don't have a city agency or a state or federal agency that's like in it with you for the long haul, and by that I mean a large chunk of the funding necessary, of the 80 to $100 million it takes to build a new building, then you're not getting a low interest rate is far from your worst problem. So it doesn't hurt, but our industry doesn't fluctuate as much with stuff like that.
Got it. Rafa has asked you, they said that there's a good chance many California cities will have to dramatically increase their pension obligation payments to CalPERS to cover the likely shortfall in their investments this year. Mm-hmm. How might a 25% increase in municipal pension obligations affect affordable housing development?
I think that...
Very specific question.
Yeah, it is. I guess it's because I used to manage pension real estate. I guess I brought that one on myself. The pension investment has always been a tricky thing for affordable housing, because the actuaries, when pension funds invest, they need to make a certain percentage, right? They need to make their return, and CalPERS hasn't been making that. That's why we're going to have to make a big contribution. And so if the 25% increase also comes with a more reasonable assumption on what that money should make if they lend it to affordable housing, and by reasonable, I mean back down into the regular stratosphere that we can afford to pay, mm-hmm. Then it could be really great. But, we'll see.
Got it. There's some questions about ways in which Mission Housing is seeing itself now in this moment of crisis as more than just a place to house, but actually part of making the whole Mission community better and stronger. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you perceive Mission Housing kind of rising to the occasion in that?
No, that's a really great question. I think that, we always say at Mission Housing that we don't own our properties, that we're stewards for that land, for our surrounding community. When we have a community room, we open it up to the surrounding neighborhood. I think that, right now what we're seeing is, first and foremost, our tenants, they need that support. They need that emotional or financial, what have you, support. We have been putting out a ton of best practices updates on through our website. We've been making all of the materials that we provide to our tenants, we've been making that somewhat public so that everyone who lives around our buildings, or everyone, can get that information. And I think that, like I said before, we really are called upon to solve all the ills of the world at every single property. And because of that, we do have this infrastructure where we can disseminate information, and we can act as a sounding board, and we can act as a support system. And the only reason we're able to do that is because we built housing there. Mm-hmm. I think that the Mission Housing, especially right now, needs to be a force of not just calm, but we need to help lead. I'm really proud, especially our resident services staff. They are really at the forefront citywide of how we're executing things like food pantry, and what we're doing to protect our staff, and what we can do to protect our community. And so, I think that it's really important for Mission to keep doing that, as long as we're keeping our staff safe. And I hope that the Mission knows that the only reason we can do that is because of all the housing that we've built over the last 5 decades.
All right, there's 2 questions about specific construction projects.
Okay.
Sarah wants a status update on 1979 Mission, and someone whose name is Galaxy S9 Plus wants to know how the 1950 Mission project is doing, and when is it?
So, okay, well, 1979 Mission, the marvel in the Mission. I don't think that's for me to give that update. Mission Housing is really honored to be somewhat part of the community group that is working to figure out a way to purchase that site and to build 100% affordable housing on the site.
Oh, is that 16th Street?
Yeah, that's where the monster was slayed recently.
I see. So, okay, that's exciting.
And then 1950 Mission is still moving forward because the affordable housing is deemed an essential act. We believe we're still basically on schedule. It was always set to hopefully be done and leased up before the end of the year. It's real estate, so if you aim for March but you land by August, you basically won. So, it's tough. it's tough to say specifically when something will be done, but I am confident that our development team and work, the mayor's office of housing especially has been really helpful. So we're hoping that's still on schedule.
Got it. Kirby, my friend Kirby. Hey, Kirby. Kirby's got a question. With the economic contradiction that there will be a decrease in market rate development to cross-subsidize below market rate housing development, and at the same time, an increased demand for BMR housing with increased unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
How does Mission Housing seek to approach this problem?
Well, like I said, our industry will never truly be what everybody deserves until the federal and state and state governments start taking the funding of affordable housing as seriously as San Francisco does.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I think in my capacity as ED needs to be now is really advocating for more public dollars for affordable housing. And the reason that I think it can happen is because dollar for dollar, when you build an affordable housing building, you're also building a daycare center, and you're building a medical facility, and you're building a free computer lab, and you're building all these things that the government would have to provide or need to provide somewhere else. And so you're actually getting a lot for your money. And when we see now how much money we have to spend on first responders and trash and DPW and things like that, all of that stuff cumulatively in a city, that gets less expensive when we have high quality affordable housing in every neighborhood. Yeah. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that our leaders will see that down the road, once we're trying to pick up all the pieces.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot more questions, Sam, but we've agreed to keep these conversations to 30 minutes.
I'm happy to, if anybody wants to email me at smoss@missionhousing.org, I'm happy to keep talking about anything,
Actually, why don't I just ask this one last question? Oh, Grande.
Great.
I thought this is interesting. Randy Shaw wrote today about how the pandemic and economic impacts could potentially create openings for affordable housing, like buying entitled properties, buying existing buildings, buying vacant lands. What needs to happen to make this happen, especially in working class neighborhoods in San Francisco?
Well, two things. One, we need apartment buildings to be legal in every neighborhood of San Francisco. And I mean that for affordable and market rate housing. We can pour all the bazillions of dollars that we want into it. And that's the other thing that it requires is a lot of money. But until we make it so that an apartment building can be built on every lot of San Francisco, you're still going to be paying a premium for things like construction and that stuff. And so, Randy is right and the Mission Housing is a really good example. I think he wrote about today about how we didn't take advantage of from 2000 to 2012. And, we're reaping the whirlwind right now because of it with the displacement bomb that went off in the Mission. And so what it's going to take is funds, public dollars. Yeah. It's going to take, like I said, we're going to have to make, especially 100% affordable, we're going to have to make it by right. You just get to build it no matter what. I don't care I just don't, that we have to do that. And then we need to ensure that our developers, our affordable housing developers, stay solvent long enough to ride out this storm as well. Yeah. So that there are people with experience to utilize those funds when the time comes.
Well, Sam, thank you so much. It's missionhousing.org.
Thank you.
And Manny's, if the operator, Sam, could put the link in the chat box to become a sponsor of Manny's, it's joinit.org/o/Manny's. We need your help right now. We are shut down and closed. And so we're asking everyone on this call, or this video moment we're going on right now, to please consider becoming a sponsor of Manny's. We really do need your help right now to get us through this moment as well. Thank you, Sam, for being such a great landlord. Thank you, Mission Housing, Sam, and Mission Housing, and Marcia, and Paul, and Sanjo, and all the people who have made Manny's possible. Thank you for doing that. And folks, for tuning in, you can tag us at welcometomannys.com, and you can tag Mission Housing at Mission Housing.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Sam, Jupiter, and Ram. Bye-bye.